You quit social media for 30 days, no feeds, no notifications, and that's when your brain starts to change in ways you could feel almost immediately. The noise you have been living in didn't just fade, it vanished, leaving behind a mental chaos you didn't know was there. At first, it felt worse, overwhelming, but then something shifted. I didn't just unplug from an appy, I broke the grip it had on my mind. And today, let's start with what hit you first, the withdrawal you never saw coming. The withdrawal you never saw coming. The first morning felt strange. You reached for your phone before your eyes were even fully open, and for a split second, you forgot you deleted everything, just an empty screen staring back at you. And that's when it hit you. Not boredom, not silence, craving. This wasn't a casual itch, it was a deep pull, like something inside you was missing, and your brain couldn't figure out what. You didn't expect it to feel this physical. The restlessness wasn't just in your head, it crept into your hands, your breathing, your posture. You caught yourself unlocking your phone without thinking, tapping the blank space where the app used to be. You weren't trying to check anything specific. Your brain just wanted something, a hit, a flash, a scroll. You were pacing through your own mind, and every door you opened was locked. You thought quitting social media would feel quiet, maybe boring, maybe even peaceful, but instead it felt loud. Your thoughts had nowhere to hide. There were no memes to numb them, no videos to distract them, no feeds to drown them out. It was like sitting in a room where the music suddenly cuts and all you're left with is the buzz of your own anxiety. By midday, you had checked your phone 17 times for no reason, no notifications, no updates, no messages, just habit, pure, automatic, mindless habit. But that's when it started to click. This wasn't just a habit. This was dependency. Your brain had been trained to expect stimulation every few seconds, and now it was starving. You weren't just missing the content, you were missing the chemical reaction, the dopamine, the little bursts of reward that kept your nervous system on a leash. And when they stopped, everything felt wrong. The emptiness wasn't peaceful, it was unsettling. Your body was present, but your mind was fidgeting. You felt disconnected, not just from the internet, but from yourself. The stillness felt foreign, and for the first time, you realized just how uncomfortable you are without noise. You tried to distract yourself, clean something, scroll through texts, read emails you didn't care about, but none of it worked. Nothing gave you that hit, that rush, that feeling of being plugged in. You weren't just unplugged from social media, you were unplugged from the world your brain had built around it, and it hurt more than you expected. By the end of the day, the truth finally landed. You hadn't been using social media to pass time. You had been using it to escape something, and now that it was gone, you had no more exit doors. You weren't just scrolling because you wanted to. You were scrolling because your brain had forgotten how not to. But hold on, because when the cravings start to fade, that's when something else begins, something you weren't prepared for. The fog you didn't know you lived in. By day 4, something shifts. The panic dulls. The cravings aren't as sharp. You stop reaching for your phone every 5 minutes. At first, it feels like relief, like you're finally adapting. But then something strange takes its place, a heaviness in your head. You're not anxious anymore, but you're not clear either. You feel foggy, like you're waking up from a long dream, and everything is out of focus. You assumed the absence of social media would make your mind feel clean and quiet, but instead, your thoughts are tangled, uncomfortable, messy. There's no algorithm feeding you distractions anymore, so now it's just you and whatever's been hiding underneath. And suddenly, you realize how long it's been since you actually sat with your own mind. You try to focus on work, but your attention drifts. You start reading something, but forget what you just read. You sit in silence, but your thoughts keep racing, jumping from one half-finished idea to the next. It's like your brain is still trying to find something to latch onto, but there's nothing there, no swipe, no buzz, no hidden novelty. That's when the realization creeps in. You haven't been thinking clearly for a long time. You've just been reacting one post at a time, one video at a time, one scroll at a time. Your mind has been stitched together by fragments, and now that the stitching is gone, it's starting to unravel. You don't just miss the content, you miss the distraction from yourself. The silence isn't peaceful, it's revealing. It shows you just how overstimulated you've been and how addicted your brain has become to interruption. You start to notice things you haven't noticed in years, the way your mind jumps to conclusions, the way you avoid stillness, the way your mood crashes without an external boost. It's like seeing your own software for the first time and realizing how many bugs are running in the background. But if you stay in that silence just a little longer, something starts to happen. Your thoughts begin to slow, they stop racing, they stop panicking, and beneath the fog, you start to feel something you haven't felt in years, clarity trying to surface. And once it does, once that first clear moment breaks through, you realize just how long you've been living in a haze. Your focus comes crawling back. It doesn't happen all at once. There's no lightning strike, no big breakthrough, just a moment quiet, almost unnoticeable, where your mind finally stays on one thought a little longer than before. You don't scroll away. You don't reach for a distraction. You just stay. And it's awkward. It's hard. but it's a start. Your attention span has been wrecked. You didn't realize how bad it was until now. You can barely read a page without your eyes drifting. You open a document, but your brain starts negotiating. You sit down to write, and within minutes, you're craving movement, craving escape. Your brain isn't used to effort, it's used to dopamine. Easy dopamine, fast, cheap, addictive. And now that it's gone, it's like trying to walk on legs that forgot how to stand. But every day, something tiny shifts. You focus for 5 minutes without drifting, then 10, then 15. You start finishing tasks instead of starting 10 and completing none. And it feels weird at first, like you're forcing it, but slowly your brain starts to remember. It starts to stretch again. It starts to rebuild what it lost. You begin noticing things, not on your phone around you, in your thoughts, in your breathing, in the way you approach a problem, and don't immediately run away from it. You stop multitasking, you stop checking, you stop reacting. And in that stillness, something powerful begins to form. Deep work. You start to realize how shallow everything had become, how many hours you spent reacting instead of creating, how many ideas never made it past the first impulse because they got buried in noise. Now there's space to go deeper, to sit with a problem and not bail when it gets hard, to think through things instead of defaulting to distraction. And even though it's slow, even though it's uncomfortable, it's also exhilarating because for the first time in a long time, you feel like your brain is yours again. And once focus returns, the next thing that shows up might just surprise you. The return of unfiltered thought. Somewhere around the second week, you stop reaching for your phone out of habit. The cravings fade, the fog lifts, and suddenly you're left with something unfamiliar space, mental space. And it doesn't stay empty for long, because the moment you stop filling your mind with everyone else's ideas, something surprising starts to happen. Your own thoughts return. At first, they come in quietly. Random ideas, fragments of memories, a solution to something you hadn't thought about in weeks. You're walking or washing dishes or sitting still, and out of nowhere, your brain drops something useful on your lap, not because you forced it, but because you finally made room for it to show up. You start having ideas again, not recycled ones, not trend-driven fluff, original thoughts. You think about starting something, writing something, solving something, not because it would go viral, but because it matters to you. You're not performing anymore. You're not curating every thought to be seen, judged, or liked. And that makes the thoughts sharper, more honest. You realize just how much of your creativity had been trapped under constant input, how every spare moment you used to have was filled with someone else's voice, someone else's face, someone else's content. And now that the noise is gone, your own voice gets louder, clearer, more confident. You pick up a journal and write something that actually surprises you. You go for a walk without music and start connecting dots in your head you never noticed before. You sit in boredom for 10 minutes and suddenly it's not boring anymore. It's fertile. There's movement again. Not the kind that comes from chasing notifications, but the kind that comes from generating something new. And maybe for the first time in years, your ideas don't feel forced. They feel real, like they belong to you again. But with all that thinking, all that awareness, something else begins to rise to the surface, something you've been avoiding. You start feeling the loneliness you've been avoiding. With the noise gone, your thoughts clear up, your focus returns, your creativity flickers back to life. But now there's a new feeling rising in the quiet, and this one hits deeper: loneliness. Not the kind you post about, the real kind. The kind that creeps in when your phone doesn't light up, when nobody checks in, when there's nothing waiting for you online. The kind that makes you realize how much social media faked a sense of connection and how empty it feels without it. You start noticing just how often you used to scroll to feel less alone. It was automatic reach for your phone, open the feed, see faces, hear voices, feel busy. But now there's a silence that stretches, a kind of distance between you and the world that social media used to mask. You feel it during quiet meals, long walks, late nights. Moments that used to be filled with flashing images and dopamine are now just still. It's uncomfortable at first. You wonder if anyone's thinking about you. You realize how often your self-worth was tied to notification, show many likes, who watched your story, who replied. And now that all of that is gone, you're left with a more honest question. What does connection look like when it's not performative? And then something shifts. You start reaching out, not to post, but to call, to talk, to listen. You have conversations that aren't interrupted by scrolling. You sit with people without looking down. You make eye contact, you stay present, and it feels unfamiliar, but it also feels real. You realize that connection isn't measured in metrics. It's measured in moments, quiet ones, awkward ones, human ones, the kind that can't be captured in a story or packaged in a reel. And while the loneliness still lingers, it becomes something else. It becomes an invitation to go deeper, to be more honest, to show up without a filter. And once that happens, once you stop performing, you start seeing yourself more clearly than you ever have before. Identity without validation. When the likes disappear, so does the performance. And what's left is you, not the version you curated, not the version the algorithm rewarded, just you without the filters, the feedback, the daily applause. And at first it feels like something's missing, but the truth is something's finally arriving. Without constant validation, you start asking different questions. You're not wondering what will get the most clicks. You're wondering what you actually believe. You're not trying to be interesting, you're trying to be honest. And that shift, it's uncomfortable, but it's real. You realize how much of your identity was shaped by how others reacted to you. The photo you posted, the caption you tweaked, the comment you rewrote 3 times. You told yourself you were just sharing, but deep down, you were performing. You were chasing approval in microdoses, 1 tap at a time. But now, you're learning to sit in your own skin without asking for a scorecard. And it's disorienting. You catch yourself wanting to post something, not to share it, but to be seen. And then you pause. You ask why. And in that pause, something grows, a kind of self-awareness that used to get drowned out by noise. You start making choices without needing to announce them. You start doing things without needing to prove them. You begin living without turning your life into content. And as strange as it feels, it also feels lighter, simpler, more aligned. And somewhere in that silence, you rediscover something you haven't felt in a long time: integrity. Not the moral kind, the kind that comes from being whole. From not splitting yourself into pieces for different platforms, from not needing to be liked to feel valid. And the more you live like that, the more stable you become. Your mood stops rising and falling with the numbers. Your confidence isn't borrowed, it's earned. And slowly, you start to realize you were never supposed to live for other people's reactions. And now that your mind belongs to you again, so does your time. Time starts expanding. One morning, you check the clock and something feels off. It's only 10 a.m. and somehow you've already done more than you usually finish by noon. No distractions, no scrolling, no jumping between apps, just time, space, attention. And for the first time in years, the hours don't feel like they're slipping through your fingers. You don't realize how much time social media was stealing until you get it back. 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, a quick break that somehow lasts an hour. And it wasn't just time, it was your focus, your momentum, your mental energy, all of it drained by a feed that never ended. But now your days stretch, they breathe. You start noticing the small gaps you used to fill with noise, waiting in line, sitting in traffic, walking from room to room. All those moments you used to numb, you actually live them now. And at first, it's weird. You feel the slowness like a weight. You wonder if you're doing enough, but then you stop rushing. You stop chasing the next thing. You sit with a book a little longer. You finish your meals without looking down. You actually hear your own thoughts. And in that stillness, something opens up. A calm you forgot was possible. A rhythm that isn't controlled by someone else's content schedule. Time doesn't just feel longer, it feels richer. You're not wasting hours reacting to everyone else's lives. You're using them to build your own. You're not playing catch up with the algorithm. You're moving at your own pace and it finally feels right. You begin to understand that time was never the problem. It was your attention. Scattered, hijacked, fragmented. And now that it's coming back, time starts to mean something again. But there's one more shift coming, the one that doesn't just feel different, it rewires everything. Rewiring in real time. Somewhere in the 3rd week, you feel it not just in your mind, but in your body. You're sleeping better, waking up clearer, thinking straighter. The mental clutter that used to sit on your chest in the morning, gone. You no longer wake up reaching for something to numb your brain. The fog that once made your first hour feel like autopilot, it's lifted. The emotional swings that followed every like, every comment, every piece of outrage quieted. The noise isn't screaming anymore. It's silent. But this isn't discipline. This isn't just a break. This is rewiring. Your brain, once stretched in 100 directions by algorithms, starts to stabilize. Your nervous system no longer expects to be jolted every 5 minutes. The anticipation, the spike, the crash, it fades. Your cortisol doesn't shoot through your veins every time a notification lights up the screen. Your heartbeat doesn't speed up when you hear the ping. And your mood, it no longer swings with numbers that don't mean anything. For the first time in a long time, your mind feels clean, not empty, not numb, just calm. And in that calm, something beautiful starts to happen. Your memory comes back. You remember what someone told you yesterday. You remember the thing you meant to do last week. You remember how to sit with a thought without losing it to a tab switch or a feed refresh. You can follow an idea from start to finish. No break, no derailment, no fight for attention. The tape doesn't tear halfway through. It holds and it plays. Your focus strengthens. You read more than one page. You don't skim every sentence. You don't forget the paragraph you just read. You don't abandon tasks halfway through because your brain is bouncing to the next shiny thing. The noise no longer hijacks your executive function. You're not chasing novelty anymore. You're chasing depth. Emotionally, you feel steadier. You don't snap as easily. You don't spiral over comments or headlines or someone else's success. You don't compare your real life to a highlight reel. You stop watching other people live just to feel like you're behind. You stop measuring your self-worth in responses and reactions. You stop thinking in fragments. You stop narrating your life in posts, and slowly you start thinking in paragraphs again. And none of this is magic. It's not some hidden mindset, it's biology. It's neuroplasticity in action. Your brain, freed from constant stimulation, starts rebalancing itself. Dopamine pathways begin to heal. Stress hormones settle. Your mental immune system comes back online. It's not dramatic, it's not immediate, but it's real. And what once felt impossible, deep focus, sustained calm, genuine presence starts to feel normal, not perfect, not permanent, but familiar, accessible, real. You're not white knuckling your way through attention anymore. You're just paying attention. You're not forcing yourself to be present. You are present, and it feels earned. You begin to realize something uncomfortable. Many of the things you once labeled as mental health struggles weren't always coming from inside you. They were being downloaded, drip by drip, from a feed designed to keep you addicted. The burnout, the comparison, the anxious buzz in the back of your brain, they weren't natural. They were manufactured, delivered to you by a machine that feeds on your focus. You start seeing how deeply social media trained your brain not just to crave noise, but to fear silence, not just to seek attention, but to equate it with worth, not just to consume, but to constantly perform. Every day you were being conditioned to scroll faster, to post more, to shrink your thoughts into characters and clips, to fear invisibility like it was death. But now, you've stepped out of that loop. You've put space between yourself and the machine. And from that space, you see clearly. You see how much of your life has been edited to fit into someone else's design. You see how long you've been reacting instead of choosing. You see that peace isn't boring, it's rare. And now it belongs to you. And just when this new version of your mind begins to feel strong, just when you feel like your brain is finally yours again, the 30 days are up. Re-entry with armor. The 30 days are over. You've made it through the cravings, the silence, the rewiring, and now you're standing at the edge of something familiar, your old digital life. The apps are still there, waiting for you. The same icons, the same scroll, the same bottomless feed. And for a moment, your finger hovers. You wonder what's changed. What's waiting for you on the other side of that tap. So you open one. Slowly, cautiously, you tell yourself it's just to check in, just to see what you missed. But the moment the screen lights up, something strange happens. You feel it, that familiar pull, that old reflex. The part of your brain that used to jump into this without hesitation suddenly flinches. Not because it's hard to resist, but because now you see it clearly. The noise doesn't hit the same. It doesn't hook you like it used to. You notice how fast the content moves, how loud everything feels, how crowded your attention becomes the second you step back in. And instead of getting lost in it, you pause, because now you know what it costs. You don't scroll for 30 minutes without realizing it. You don't click on every story, every headline, every video. You don't get caught in arguments with strangers. Not because you're trying to be disciplined, but because you're no longer hungry for it. You've seen what it's like to live without the noise, and now the silence feels more natural than the scroll. You move differently now. You open the app with purpose, or you don't open it at all. You stop checking first thing in the morning. You leave your phone in another room when you work. You turn off notifications and keep your home screen clean. Not because someone told you to, but because you felt what your brain can be when it's not constantly interrupted. You've built boundaries, not walls. You don't need to delete everything forever. You're not afraid of social media. You just don't let it own you anymore. You use it, but it doesn't use you. And that's the difference. That's the armor. Because now, every time you log in, you're aware. You feel the weight, you recognize the design, and when your attention starts to drift, you know how to bring it back. That control, it was earned through withdrawal, through discomfort, through clarity, through 30 days of silence that gave you your mind back. And what's most surprising is this re-entry isn't about going back to who you were. It's about carrying what you've learned into who you're becoming. You don't need to be offline forever. You just need to remember what your brain feels like when it's truly yours. And that brings you to the final realization, the one truth most people never uncover. The real reason you were addicted wasn't what you thought. You weren't addicted to social media. You were addicted to escape. This whole time you thought it was about the apps, the notifications, the endless feed. You thought you were addicted to your screen, to the scrolling, to the likes. But after 30 days without it, you finally see what was really going on. It wasn't the phone that had a hold on you. It was the feeling underneath. You weren't addicted to social media. You were addicted to escape. Escape from boredom. Escape from silence. Escape from your own thoughts. You used to fill every gap in your day, every uncomfortable pause, every quiet moment with something, anything to avoid sitting in your own head. Social media wasn't just a tool, it was your hiding place. And the more you used it, the more you forgot what it meant to actually feel, to think, to be. Every time you opened the app, you weren't just looking for updates. You were avoiding something. Maybe it was anxiety, maybe it was self-doubt, maybe it was the pressure to always be doing more, achieving more, proving more. Whatever it was, the scroll gave you a temporary way out, a loop you could disappear into, a rhythm that kept you from facing the real conversation happening inside your head. But the moment you quit, everything you'd been avoiding came back, and it didn't wait. The silence was immediate, the stillness was loud, the discomfort showed up like a flood, and this time, there was nowhere to run. That's why the first few days felt unbearable, not because you missed content, but because you were finally forced to sit with everything you'd been numbing. You didn't know how much you relied on distraction until it was gone. You didn't realize how afraid you were of boredom, or stillness, or raw emotion. But once you stopped escaping, you began to process. You began to notice patterns. You began to think more clearly, feel more deeply, move through discomfort instead of avoiding it. And in that space, where all the noise used to live, your real mind finally had room to speak. You started to understand what presence actually feels like. Not perfect, not easy, but real. You didn't need to broadcast your life to feel seen. You didn't need likes to feel valued. You didn't need to keep chasing more, because for the first time in a long time, you felt whole. Not because everything was figured out, but because you weren't fragmented anymore. Now, when you open social media, you do it with awareness. You do it with limits. You do it without giving it your identity. Because you know what it feels like to have your brain back. You know what it costs to give it away. And you're not going to hand it over again so easily. You thought this challenge would be about discipline, about detox, about willpower. But what you discovered was something far deeper. You discovered the truth, that your brain wasn't broken. It was buried, under noise, under performance, under the never-ending scroll of other people's lives. But not anymore. You didn't just quit social media. You reclaimed your time, your focus, your creativity, your voice, your thoughts, your emotional stability. You reclaimed the parts of yourself you forgot how to hear. And most importantly, you reclaimed your mind.